Thank you. I just want to say that I'm very grateful and very honored and humbled to reflect on Mr. Hamilton and the beginning of the Community Foundation. It's difficult for me to realize it's been over 35 years since we got it underway. How I became acquainted with John, I think it was due to the fact that I had called on Chautauqua National Bank, as I did all the banks in my years here selling office equipment, typewriters and art metal furniture. And John was usually always in his office right to the left as you went into the bank, right around the corner. And he was a very hospitable and very receptive to my visits, which I was not accustomed to, because in Pittsburgh, where I'd come from, just to call on a bank president was not usually appropriate for a typewriter salesman. Chautauqua Region Community Foundation, I don't think would exist today if it were not for John Hamilton and his concept. And I'm sure he would be pleased at the accomplishments that the foundation has made to this point. Thank you.
We had grown immensely from the real early days. We passed our $1 million hurdle, and we passed our $5 million hurdle. And so somewhere we were headed toward our 10th year, and we decided we wanted to try to get to $10 million in 10 years. And we worked, and we worked, and we did as much communicating to the public as we could. And we came to our 10-year celebration, which was a wonderful event at the Hotel Jamestown Crystal Ballroom. We had, I think, all but one who had moved away of our founding directors there. We honored them. We had a lot of us at the kids who had scholarships were performing for us that night. It was really a gala affair, very, very well done. I was president at the time, and I had my script all put together of why we hadn't quite made $10 million at our 10th year anniversary. We were a little bit short. I had this speech all figured out, and right before the opening curtain, everyone was having a good time socially. Sherry Cadwell came backstage right before I was supposed to go to the podium and said, "Craig, guess what? We just got the Wild Fund." And it was like $1,400,000. He said, "Judge Cass held a special session of court a couple hours ago, and we can now count it that the Wild Fund is coming." And I was so shocked. Anyway, it was a complete surprise for everybody in fact, the staff and everybody else. And I had to throw away my whole talk at the end, because instead of making an excuse why we were a little bit short, if we still should feel good, I was able to announce we were slightly over the $10 million at the anniversary dinner. It was spectacular. It was a grand night.
I'm here to talk a little bit about my tenure as president of the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. During that time period, one of the things that I reflect on is we were able to identify various bank trust funds. These are funds which had been created by donors, people who died and set it through their wills, and set up scholarship funds, and the banks were to administer it. I was aware from having relationships with the banks that the banks as trustees loved to invest money, but didn't particularly like to invest and administer the scholarships. So often scholarships would go unused. So after consultation with the board, we made it a point to knock on every bank in town. And I got to meet every trust officer and every bank loan officer. and with the idea that why don't they give us the money, we'll own it, and then we'll administer the terms of that trust. That found favor with every bank in town, and so a significant number of scholarship funds were in fact turned over to the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation. There was no way to really know, there was no central bank of information concerning scholarships, and I'd like to think that the Chautauqua Region Community Foundation was that location. As it turned out, as time has shown over the last 20 years after I was president, it continues to be a major source of scholarships, the principal source of scholarships, and a variety of activity, and certainly something which a real sense of pride for the community.
When we talk about how the strategy, the investment strategy of the Community Foundation came to be, it's important to know that it evolved. And it evolved always with the safety of the assets in mind. When I first came to the foundation, the assets of the foundation were invested in stocks, 60%, bonds, 40%. I think we had 3 money managers who had been with the foundation for a long time, and we had a long time relationship with them. The problem was they weren't doing a very good job. So it was a big change at the foundation when we started to add money managers and delete some others. So as time went on, we added international investments, global investments. We added money managers with specific strengths in different areas. Important thing to note is that the investment committee always had great people. People who understood investing, and certainly people who had the best interests of the Community Foundation at heart. Another big development was when Randy Ordinas moved into the advisory capacity. And Randy has been with us a long time. And Randy deserves a lot of credit. He has done one heck of a job in advising the investment committee. Some people, of course, think we should be more aggressive at times. But you got to remember, we're the stewards of other people's money.
One of my best memories was a visit to the home of Reggie and Betty Lene. What wasn't so comfortable with that visit is I was there to ask for money, and I've never been one to really find that a comfortable and easy thing to do. And I'll never forget, Reggie must have sensed that uneasiness. And as I started my awkward introduction, he said, "Don, we've known each other a long time." He said, "Let me put you at ease. Your job is not to convince me to give money today." He said, "Betty and I made that decision to be generous many years ago. But here's what he said that was important. What you're here today to do is to present an opportunity that may or may not fit with our charitable intentions." I felt a great sense of relief and proceeded to have a great conversation. But you know, it begs a question that I've pondered for years. What makes a person generous? What made Reggie and Betty the generous people that we all know them to have been? They understood the important role that a local community plays in each of us to help us reach our full potential. You know, communities provide employment, they educate our children, they provide a wide array of vital services. So generosity simply is one way that we can express gratitude to others in return. And I can think of no better way to do that than to endow an organization like our Chautauqua Region Community Foundation or one of the many charitable groups that it supports.
Enriching the life in the Chautauqua region ultimately takes a lot of forms, not only in a grant-making form, but in a donor tool type form. In other words, what are we going to provide for those folks who really want to help in the community, but aren't quite sure how to do it? And the unrestricted became a great way to do that. And probably the most important part of that is the realization that this foundation is really in perpetuity. It's multi-generational. 100 years from now, the foundation will exist. The needs of Jamestown, whether it's 5 years from now, 100 years from now, will be significantly different. But nonetheless, the foundation needs to be able to kind of move and address those issues as we move on. And unrestricted funds is a great way to do that. We have a committee here of many, many people who spend endless hours on a volunteer basis researching the needs of the community, researching grant applications, researching broader issues and bringing them to the board, who also spends endless hours working on these topics. We set up a fund years ago. My company, Career Capital, set up an unrestricted fund simply because I don't think I could do as good a job as the broader volunteer base of the foundation. So in setting up the fund, we spent several years funding it. We continue to fund it today. I feel that in general, we've probably had a greater impact than had I sat back or had my company sat back and said, we're going to give money here, we're going to give money there, in a reactive sort of way.
At the beginning of my term as president, the board was wrestling with how could we have an impact in the community in a major way, and there had been established a special projects fund. Then the arena project became a major piece of the puzzle of revitalizing the downtown of Jamestown and of Chautauqua County. The Cabby Foundation and the other foundations were looking for a way to make people in the town feel better about the town. We initially gave a $100,000 grant. Then we stepped up and did an additional $400,000.
Relatively early in my term as president, the Second War in Iraq began. Also during that time, 2 young soldiers became casualties of the war, Sergeant James Madison and Private First Class Charles Stephen Cooper. As their families struggled with their grief, they also struggled to find an appropriate way to honor their memory. Each of their families decided to create an endowment at CRCF. In reality, the establishment of an endowment fund is a decision that has far-reaching implications. For the family that establishes a fund in memory of a loved one, it serves as a way to honor that person's memory and ideals over time. For the families of Sergeant Madison and Private First Class Cooper, each year as a scholarship is awarded to a worthy individual, they can see tangible proof that not only does their loved one's memory live on, but that because of them, other lives are impacted positively today and in the future. For the foundation, an endowment fund is a long-term responsibility. I can assure you that this is not something done on autopilot. There are many lively discussions at the investment committee, and the strategy for investing is constantly monitored. That scrutiny will continue consistently in perpetuity, even as the faces at the table change. The community benefits from knowing that because of funds like those created to honor the memory of Sergeant Madison and Private First Class Cooper, we will benefit not just today, but each year, year after year, for generations to come.
One of my fondest memories of working with the Community Foundation was on a grants review of the Allen Park project. I was invited into the home of one of the organizers of the project and sat down and presented with an extremely professional program and project and timeline and so forth. I also was able to participate in some brownies. Now, Given that I like sweets, I can, for the record, it had nothing to do with my favorable recommendation. As with any organization such as this, the staff and the board members do all the work, and the president gets to take the accolades. This was true in the case of the foundation attaining the National Standards certification. This National Standards is awarded by the United States Council on Federations. This accreditation provides the credibility to the donors, professional advisors, and shows that we're a trustworthy philanthropic partner.
I'm here to talk about the largest gift that the Community Foundation has ever received. It all started in either late 2006 or early 2007 when Jake and Randy started talking with a donor that would like to provide funds to the Community Foundation that they were uncomfortable handling any longer. It was a difficult decision for them to relinquish the funds, but they knew they had to. The funds were not being utilized the way they wanted, and they were very concerned about managing that much in dollars. The total amount that was donated to the Community Foundation, that when it was finally completed in early 2008, was $4,651,000. Over 10 years that I participated with the Community Foundation, I learned more about the community than I learned at any given time throughout the other 30 years I've been in the community, or 20 years, I'm sorry. And that is because the Community Foundation touches so much of the communities surrounding it, going all the way from Randolph into Cassadaga, Mayville, Westfield, as well as the primary area around Jamestown. The other aspect I wanted to touch is I wanted to thank my family for allowing me to do this, and especially my wife. Thank you.
The Fund for the Region concept was born from a realization that we could only increase our positive impact in the community by investing more dollars into fewer projects. Now, not surprisingly, most of the funds that come our way come to us for designated purpose. And I don't want anybody to think for a second that we don't appreciate those funds too. But the unrestricted dollars give us the flexibility to adapt to the changing needs of the community. No one could have known in 1978 what the Chautauqua region would look like today, and we certainly can't know what it's going to look like 35 years from now. But one thing is for certain, the needs will be different than they are today. The founders recognized this 35 years ago, and it's as true today as it was then. The Fund for the Region will give the foundation the ability to adapt to those changing needs as those needs are determined. We're very proud of the concept, that we've worked hard on it, and we're very grateful to those that have helped us implement and bring it to fruition.
To everyone present here this evening, I very sincerely appreciate your involvement in our community, and I commend your efforts in keeping it going, expanding the foundation, and moving our wonderful Chautauqua area ahead. Thank you.